Okay, welcome again. We have been deeply consumed in putting together the findings of scientists, astronomers, and so forth with the writings of ancient people and the myths of the ages. And it becomes so obvious that we're on the brink of breaking the code and understanding what we've always referred to as God, not through religion or superstition, which to me are one and the same, but like the Bible said, face to face. In 1 Corinthians 13:12 of the Bible, it says, "For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face." It's interesting. There's a few other biblical scriptures that I would cover. In Ezekiel 20:35, it says, "And I will bring I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you face to face." And in Judges 6:22, "And when Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord, Gideon said, 'For because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face.'" And then in Genesis 32:30, it says, "Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face." So all of the references there in the Bible refer to seeing God face to face. And in the very beginning of the Bible, it declares that seeing God face to face is connected to the pineal, which would be the pineal gland of the brain. So we understand, I hope that you understand, or at least consider, that it is the messengers of what we call God that flow down from above and find their entrance into the human mind via the pineal gland of the brain. Messengers which are messenger particles, and in scientific terms are known by the name that Albert Einstein gave them, photons, messenger particles. The pineal gland of the brain, which is the corridor for the messenger, is the single eye of ancient writings. In ancient times they would call it the single eye. It's the pineal gland of the brain. It's the hallway or the corridor from which light enters the body. The pineal gland, if you look it up in a scientific document or whatever, is referred to as the body's light receptor, the single eye. And then Jesus comes along, and in Matthew 6:22 said, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, your body will fill with light." And there's the reference to the single eye. There's the reference to the single eye, meaning your body will fill with light. The Bible says God is light. And Jacob in the ancient Old Testament said, "I've seen God face to face, and I'll call the place Peniel." But this is the amazing part to me. The amazing part to me is that religious people pay no attention to this whatsoever. They don't even consider this. The point in the body where God is met face to face is declared by the religious to be the opening for devils. And they'll tell you, don't do that. Don't get into that meditation. Don't go downstairs with all those crazy people. You'll open your mind to devils. Well, what do they mean by that? They totally disregard the fact that Jesus said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. It's in the Bible. They don't consider that. They totally disregard the fact that Jacob says, "I have seen God face to face. I'll call the place Peniel." They disregard that. In the Vatican, on the Sistine Chapel, there's a drawing by I guess Michelangelo, and the drawing is of angels and all this. But as you look at it from a distance, and I'll have a picture for this to show you shortly, it's the human brain. And right outside the front door of where that drawing is, there's a cement statue of a pine cone. And somebody knows what's going on. But that isn't revealed to the average person. it's just a statue of a pine. Why do you have a statue of a pine cone in the front door and then a painting which is obviously a symbolic painting of the human brain because it's talking about the pineal gland of the brain. The very, very same thing here that we're discussing. So instead of understanding this, and instead of understanding about the pineal gland of the brain and sharing it with people so that people can find, they talk about where did their traditional values go, and they want to put prayer back in school, and all of the other distractions that cloud the fact that they're actually turning their back on the very Bible that they revere as sacred. They all carry Bibles around, but what it says in the Bible they don't want anything to do with. Because the Bible or God is not near as important as religion to them. So that to me is amazing and very, I find it difficult to understand, intelligent, educated, sophisticated people. As we're working to put all the pieces of this puzzle together, religion ignores it. Absolutely wants nothing to do with it. Because what they do is they stop at the Middle Ages. Their understanding of reality and God or the universe stops at the Middle Ages, a time when people were burned alive for disagreeing with the church, a time when scientific pioneers like Galileo and Copernicus were reviled and destroyed. And religion doesn't extol Galileo and Copernicus. You never go into a church on Sunday and hear them say how wonderful Galileo and Copernicus were. They would never do that. Instead, they tell you about the great minds that were actually the people that killed these people. And so we walk away from a violent earth. I would hope that you have. The earth that's been molded in its violent ways by religions, which are all cults. I get a kick out of the fact that they say, oh, so-and-so is a member of a cult. The biggest cult in the world is organized religion, simply because it doesn't allow people to think for themselves. And they pit one group against the other and drive people crazy trying to achieve a heavenly afterlife based solely on one group's ideas. In this case, the group's ideas were built on the blood of scientific minds, and these people who tried to tell us the truth in religion couldn't deal with them. But today we have NASA. We have a different church. Our ministers are scientists and astronomers. And our church is the locations of these places where the great work is being done, and NASA and San Francisco State University and Stanford University, and places where Geoffrey Marcy and Paul Butler found the great planets orbiting sun stars that nobody ever saw before. And then we've been talking of Jeremy Narby of Stanford University and John Gribbins of England and Gary Zukav and on and on and on. These are the ministers today. And these people are the ones who are taking us face to face with God. True evangelists of God. And the reason they're true evangelists of God, because they're telling anyone who will listen the truth about the universe, ourselves, and they're seeking out the purpose for life upon this earth. So those are the ones that I extol as our ministers. If you look on page of the material that I've given you, on page 114, I've told you, asked you to put a green light at your house, and of course, I've even had people, say, well, he must be a cult, he's going to have a green light at his house, and all this kind of stuff. But there's an article there by NASA titled The Green Party. The Green Party. And it tells us of the greatest power booster on planet Earth, which they call Photosystem 1, which is light from above interacting with green. Light coming down from above, touching chlorophyll in plants, touching the hemoglobin in the human being, and causing this tremendous surge of power, energy. Green light. And if you look on 114C, they connect green light with DNA. They described DNA in the very last sentence of 14 as a molecular code which reads like an encrypted message. And if you don't think there's a message in DNA, take a look. When you go home, stand in front of a mirror. You look like the way you do because of the family that you're part of, which is all part of DNA. Your hair is the color of it is. Your skin is the color it is. Your nose is shaped like it is. Your eyes are the color. All of this has to do with the encrypted message, the code. The code that made you look like you look. Now, what about the code that deals with your what we call spirit, your deep person? And if there's an encrypted message inside of you, what about the encrypted message outside of you? Then Jeremy Narby of Stanford University found a connection between green plants and DNA in humans. A long study conducted to determine how jungle people could know of the molecular structure of plants so they could combine them for healing purposes. Great pharmaceutical companies from the United States will go over to the Amazon jungle and try to find out how these people know that if they take this plant and boil it down and they take and combine it with this plant and boil it down, it makes something that will heal a certain disease. Of all the billions of plants in the jungle, how did they know that they have to take that one and that one? If they take that one and any other, it won't work. But if they take that one and that one, it'll work. And Narby said, how would they possibly know this? The whole thing boiled down to this. And you know what's one of the most remarkable things that I have ever seen? And I think that you shared that in the response that I had. But what he found out, because the jungle people said, I know because this plant talks to me. And so Narby finally decided, well, wait a minute. You know, I can't stand here and talk to a plant. The plant can't say, how do you do? Oh, fine, how are you? And, you know, what's new? Well, that's ridiculous. But do you know what he found? And this is an anthropologist from Stanford University. This is a baccalaureate with great degree. What he found and what he shared with us is that the DNA in the plant is exactly the same as the DNA in you. And when the DNA in that plant got inside of the body, the DNA in that plant started to converse with the DNA in you. In other words, it was DNA from outside talking to DNA inside, and bingo. The encrypted message becomes decoded. So Narby concluded in his conclusion, he said, in their vision, shamans take their consciousness to the molecular level and gain access to information about DNA. This is where they see the double helixes, the twisted ladders, chromosome shape. This is how they have known for millennia that the vital principle is the same for all living beings and is shaped like entwined serpents, or a vine, or a ladder, or winding stairs. DNA is the source of their astonishing botanical and medical knowledge. So basically, when the shaman would say, the plant told me, Dr. Narby is saying, that's exactly the truth. I mean, you know, if you go to tell somebody up on the street, well, you know, I talk to plants, they'll say, oh, you must go to that church down in the Vito's basement. They would know. But on the other hand, Narby is a very prestigious scientist. He's a very prestigious scientist. And what he said is DNA is the source of their astonishing knowledge. And what the shamans explain corresponds precisely to the descriptions that biologists have about DNA. So what's so important about that? What's so important about that is you come in, and we extol you to come in and to be in meditation here. And what are you doing? When you're in meditation, you're bringing light in from the outside. Now, here's what Narby said, which is so important. That the twisted ladder, whatever, of DNA, which is the same in all things, it emits light called photon. Photon is a messenger particle. So what Narby has showed us is that science has proved that DNA inside of you sends out light. I don't know what candle power it is, but it's power of a candle. But it sends out light. Coming from your body is a light. Coming from your body is a message, and it's the light coming from DNA. Now, that's okay. But let's take the other way around. Let's take from the universe. Let's take from what we call God. What about God, light coming to you? The light coming to you, then, the DNA of God entering into you, as opposed to the DNA of you entering into somebody else, that's a significant thing. In other words, is this what happens to us when we receive light from above? We're receiving God's DNA? And then when the DNA comes into the body, don't forget, you've never talked to God. You've never talked to a plant. We don't understand these things, but understand what's being said here. It is the DNA from one source communicating with the DNA in you. It opens a whole new ball game, doesn't it? It means that you just have to get out of the way. You don't have to try to do anything in meditation. You just get out of the way, and the DNA that enters in will communicate with the DNA in you, and it becomes very vital. It's a logical explanation. It is the first logical explanation of how this works. And it's a scientific fact. DNA sends out a light. So if DNA sends out a light from you, we're talking about DNA that comes from the universe, the universal DNA, the twins, the creator of all things. It's exciting as can be. I mean, I can go into any church, and if they'd ever invite me, I can go in any church, I can go in any group, and I can explain how it all works. See? But they don't want it. They couldn't deal with it because it doesn't match up with what they say in their book. But no, this is how this all works, and this is how Narby found out. This is how Narby found out that a people in the middle of the jungle with no drugstore, no doctors, no hospitals were able to heal people by picking different plants and combining them and healing diseases. And they said, how did you? They knew the molecular structure. And what he said is, I needed to understand how DNA could transmit visual information. This is what Dr. Narby said. I knew that it emitted photons, which are electromagnetic waves. Aha! The DNA in your body emits photons, which are messenger particles. So that's when we sit here and I say, well, let's send light to somebody in your family or send light to somebody you're concerned about. You're sending a message. When I even said that, I thought, that sounds good, but how does that work? But now I know how it works. You really do send out messages. You really do send out photos. You really do send out an encrypted message. It really is true. But he said, I remember what Carlos Perez Chamoun said. He told me to compare spirits to radio waves. Once you turn on the radio, you can pick them up. So then Narby looked into the literature on photons and biological origins and so forth and so on. But remember, and this is very important, what he showed us too, that photons, there are photons of biological origin. That particular light we're looking at, the photon there, is not of biological origin, but he said there's light that of biological origin. That's how a dog communicates with you. And people will say, there was something in the dog and I, or the cat and I. They take these little dogs and puppies and they bring them to nursing homes, and people who haven't talked in years will talk or come out of their shell. There's something that goes on between the two of them. Well, there is this transmission coming out of the animal, and it's entering into the DNA, and the DNA is the same in the animal as it is in the person, and the two talk together. Not the mind, but that it's the DNA in you talking to the DNA in something else. So here then we take it to a higher level. It is the DNA in you talking to the DNA in God. That's why when they asked Mother Teresa, they said, Mother Teresa, how do you pray? What do you say when you pray? She says, I don't say anything, I listen. And I said, okay, but when you're listening, what does God say to you? She says, He doesn't say anything, He listens. And what the heck does that mean? It means that it is not minds talking to one another. It is not brains talking to one another. It is DNA talking to one another. And then you come back and it's all the same. It doesn't make any difference how wonderful God is. His DNA is the same as your DNA. And so then there's a room for, see, you would say, oh, well, that's what the church says. I'm not worthy. Oh, I'm a worthless, rotten, scuzzy sinner. Oh, God, oh, I'm such a mess. And oh, God, what a creep I am. Oh, amazing grace, what a wretch am I. Let's sing a wonderful song. And all of this junk. But they forget one very important part. No matter how worthless, no matter how rotten or whatever a person may think they are, their DNA is exactly the same as everybody else's DNA. The king's DNA is no different than the beggar's DNA, and the two can talk on an equal level. So that's what Narby found out. Narby reached a conclusion about the people in the jungle that the plant's DNA from the outside entering within, causing knowledge to exist where it didn't exist before. And he says the molecules of nicotine and the methylbromine contained in this particular thing activated receptors which set off a cascade of electrochemical reactions inside the neurons, leading to the stimulation of DNA. And then, when this happened, the shamans perceived this as a hallucination. But as Narby said, that's only what the mind was picking up as the DNA was interacting. When the DNA from the outside started talking to the DNA in the inside, the mind saw it as a hallucination, but it wasn't a hallucination. And so Narby said, there is the source of knowledge. DNA emitting photons like an aquatic dragon spitting fire. I love that. Yes?
Sorry, Bill. There's a blue K car out there with its headlights on. A blue Chrysler K car, headlights.
Oh, there we go. Here goes the Chrysler. Hurry up.
Don't run.
No, don't run. Just
Don't run.
if it's out, we have jumpers, so don't worry about it. Okay. Thank you, Dave. I'm glad you did that. Well, so my conclusion here, when I'm looking at all of this wonderful stuff, incidentally, for those of you who might be here for the first time, this is the green lightsaber from Star Wars. This is the green lightsaber because remember, when the Jedi come back, and that's what we're waiting for. You can say you're waiting for the return of Jesus or Christ consciousness or the aliens. You're waiting for the return of the Jedi because they overcome the forces of darkness with green light. And as they come down, they will simply... We got it, ready. It'll always be here. It'll always be here. I'll always think of you in the green light. Okay. So we meditate on these revelations of Dr. Narby. DNA contains photons. Light from above touches the green of the earth, inside and outside of animals and humans, and stimulates DNA. Therefore, we understand an amazing thing that even though we were touching on before we thought we knew, it wasn't clear. Now it's clear. You see what I'm saying to you? We used to say, well, if we meditate, we collapse the wave and the particle comes in and we'll be in a harmony with God. But we didn't really know. But all the time I'm thinking to myself when I used to say that stuff, and wait a minute here. I mean, the brain, you know, there's got to be firings in the electricity of the brain. Something's really got to be happening here. Now we know how it happens. In other words, we used to think we knew, but now we know face to face. Now we understand. In other words, you know what's so exciting about this? Now we know how God does this. We understand what it's about. See, in your meditation, you draw through the pineal gland the light or the magnetism which enters your body and touches the hema or hemoglobin or the green, which in turn sends forth the photons outside of your body. Angles of light coming down to us and are carried to their destination. And more often than not, they're carried to their destination on wings of music. One of the things that, keep this in mind, because I know it's probably with a lot of New Age people, they make up their minds, say, oh no, this is the way it is, there's no other way. Because when we do meditation here, we do music. And the reason I do it is because that's what Buddha said to do, and that's what Pythagoras said to do. There's a lot of people that come in here and say, well, I can't meditate here because the music distracts me. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Distract you from what you think you're supposed to be doing to meditate. Okay? But this is what Dr. Narby said. The tribes, the people of the jungle, the people of the ancient times, every group that has ever come face to face with creation, with the universe, with God, would never even conceive of going into a meditation in silence. It's with music. So play your music, and as you center, play your music as you await the light from supernova 1987A, and play your music as you center, and now await the light from Eta Carina, the one that we showed you last week was discovered by the scientists with this tremendous light. I thought it was one of the greatest things. They found Eta Carina, they found this star, and the scientists said there are 6,000 visible stars in the sky, and we know exactly the properties of every one of them except this one. And said, this one is weird. That's what he said. This one is weird. We don't understand this. But it said its magnetism is heading down to the earth. So here we have proof of people in remote areas of the world who are able to work through science, though they know nothing of science. Come on, I know you. Not one of you, if you went into the jungle and some guy with a loincloth comes up and he says, here, take a drink of this. No thanks, I'm full, I just had lunch, I'm going to the Burger King. You wouldn't touch it. Because you have no idea. You know why? Because we are so brainwashed, we can't conceive of the fact, and this is the fact, that jungle person is far more advanced in understanding the molecular needs of the body and healing of disease than a baccalaureate in Princeton University or your druggist at the drugstore. Oh, it can't be, but it is. Why? Because he got his information direct from nature. Proof. And then we wonder, at the same time, we wonder about the classic Greeks, such as Democritus and Zeno. Zeno was talking about quantum physics 3,000 years ago. Who told him? What plant was he snorting? Zeno was talking about that. Democritus was talking about the exchange of electrons in an atom 3,000 years ago. Who told them? Hippocrates gave us the very foundation of our scientific culture, that these people existed in a time when information was known to nobody else. And so once again, just like Dr. Narby said, how could these jungle people figure out how to combine these plants? How did they know the molecular structure of these plants to interact with the molecular structure of the human body? How could they know? How could Democritus know about electrons and atoms? And how could Zeno know about quantum physics? And how could Hippocrates know about medicine? And how could they? There is a message that is an encrypted message, and according to the National Aeronautics and Space Agency, is connected to photosystem 1, which is light from above touching the green in the earth and the green in humans. Its entrance within the human body is via the light receptor, which is the pineal gland of the brain. And right now, as you're sitting here and you're looking at me, there is a single eye, and it's on fire, and it's looking down at you. And not only is there a single eye on fire in the sky looking down at you, but its fire is going to hit this earth around 2000, 2002. And that wasn't prophesied by any kind of a New Age journal. That was prophesied by the National Aeronautics and Space Agency. And the center eye of this is green. And God, or whatever it is, made it very easy for everybody to see it because he had it put on the cover page of National Geographic. And you know what? They still didn't look. They still didn't look. Could you imagine if organized religion believed in this kind of stuff? They'd be out worshiping in the streets. They'd be out, oh my God, this is the sign of God. But you see, it goes against everything they taught because what they taught is wrong. And so they ignore this kind of stuff. This is the single eye. When Jesus Christ said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Bango. There it is in the sky looking down at you right now. And they won't look at it. They won't even mention it. Now this is what is interesting. The single eye, or the pineal gland of the brain, okay, is known as Epiphysis, epiphysis, cerebri, cerebri, which is the cerebrum of the brain, which is the cherubim of the temple. The covering of the brain is the cherubim whose job is to spread their wings and cover. And epiphysis is another name for the pineal gland of the brain. And the word epiphysis is the root of the religious holy day, which is called Epiphany, which is the enlightening, the awareness. What are they talking about when they celebrate Epiphany? They don't know it. They're celebrating the pineal gland of the brain. Oh, where did you get that? Oh, it's very hard to find this. You have to look in Webster's dictionary. Most people have one. But it's there. If you look up the word epiphysis, you'll see it's the pineal gland of the brain. You look up the word epiphany, it means to be enlightened. And not only is it epiphysis, it's epiphysis cerebri, which means the enlightening in the brain.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, sir. Excuse me.
Just one word.
Yes.
Epiphysis is also the name for pineal.
Yes, yes. Epiphysis is also the name for pineal, the pineal gland of the brain, or the pine cone. That's right, exactly. But that's what's so interesting about it, because this is a big religious day, Epiphany. We're celebrating the Epiphany. Oh, I heard you're celebrating the Epiphany. Yes, you're celebrating the pineal gland. What? We never heard of such a thing. Look in Webster's dictionary. And if you look, you can find this on page 53 of the stuff that I gave you. You'll see the pineal gland, and it says right there, it is also called epiphysis. It says pineal gland, fourth paragraph down, a small cone-shaped organ in the brain, also called epiphysis, secreting the hormone melatonin. Then if you look at page 55 of the stuff I gave you, okay, it says you see epiphany. And what is epiphany? A revelatory, it means something revealed, a revelatory manifestation of a divine being. Epiphany, epiphysis, a revelatory manifestation of a divine being. I'll buy that. Epiphysis, Albert just said pineal, right? And Jacob said, a revelatory manifestation of a divine being. Genesis 32:30. I have seen God face to face. I'll call this place pineal. I mean, I don't really think you have to be a nuclear scientist to figure out what everybody's talking about. That's epiphysis. That's epiphany. That's meeting God face to face. And as the Bible said, that's pineal. I've seen God face to face. That's what the guy said in the Bible, Genesis 32:30. And wouldn't that qualify as a revelatory manifestation of a divine being? That's true. Then it's epiphany. Then it's epiphysis. Then it's pineal. And notice in paragraph 4 on page 55, where it says epiphany. It says epiphany, a spiritual flash that would change the way I viewed myself. Now, how can you have an epiphany, a spiritual flash that changes you? Wouldn't that have to occur in your brain? Or would it be in your foot? Have you ever had something in your foot that changed the way you saw, or you hadn't? Of course not. You have to have a change in consciousness. So it has to be a change in your brain. Now, if that would occur, wouldn't that occur through the light receptor of the brain? Of course it would. Something coming in from the outside that changes the way you view yourself, and where would it come through? The light receptor, which is the pineal gland of the brain. Okay, so that's why it says epiphysis, epiphany, revelatory manifestation. I have seen God face to face. I'll call the place pineal. And Jesus said if you practice the single eye, your body will fill with light, and the Bible says God is light. So it all comes together, and religion won't even look at it. We don't know. We have faith in God. Notice in the fifth paragraph, under Revelation, it says, God revealed. Wouldn't that be face to face? Pineal, epiphysis, epiphany. And notice there's a reference to the burning bush, epiphysis. Now you know what's being referred to when Moses goes to the mountain and God speaks to him from the burning bush. Of course, there's no bush burning. Do you realize that there was no bush burning? Do you realize that nobody comes out of it? When a bush goes on fire, do you realize it burns up? Nothing speaks out of it. Do you realize it's mythology? And it's talking about the pineal gland of the brain. You go to the mountain. You go up into the realms of higher consciousness of the mind, and there you are spoken to from the burning bush. What is it? It's the pineal gland. Of course, René Descartes, he had to tiptoe around with his philosophy because of the superstitions of the church. René Descartes was about to write this great revelation about, all of this stuff, and it was contrary to the church. And a guy came in and knocked on his door, and he said, René, I know you're putting this stuff together, but I want to tell you what's happening with Galileo. You better not. There was as much terror going around on the face of the land from the church as there ever was from Adolf Hitler or the Russians or anybody else. You didn't dare say anything, because if you did, a knock would come to your door. And you open the door, and there's Father Slit Throat. And that's why there's so many of them today. Because it's that fear. You're controlled by fear. Rene Descartes wasn't 100% correct on all of his ideas concerning the brain and the pineal gland. I mean, he was in a very difficult time, the Middle Ages. But one important fact that he put forth is beyond question. We now know, as he showed, that immediately below the pineal gland lies what is called mesencephalic tegmentum, the uppermost part of the brainstem, which is crucial to generating alertness, the capacity for consciousness, without which there can be no reason, no cognition, no volition. So, I mean, he was right there, and that's where this pineal gland is located. It's right in the middle of all of this action, right in the center, right between the wings of the cherubim of the brain. And yet religion knows nothing about it. Or if they know, they stay silent. Because the pineal gland is within all living beings, which makes the gateway to God face-to-face available to everybody without religion. And they can't deal with that. The myths told us about the Cyclops. And I mean, if you want to look at the Cyclops, take another look. Take another look in the sky. Supernova, 1987. Hey, there's the Cyclops. One eye here, one eye there, and one in the center. There's the Cyclops. And who were they? Do you know who the Cyclops were? Argus, A-R-G-E-S. Brontes, B-R-O-N-T-E-S. And Steropes, S-T-E-R-O-P-E-S. And what do their names mean? Bright, Thunderer, and Lightener. And they forged the thunderbolts of the Zeus that he threw from the back. And when Zeus would ride through the sky, he would throw his lightning bolts that the single eye, the Cyclops, made. And when he got, and where did Zeus put the thunderbolts? He put them in a container that was attached to the winged white horse named Pegasus. And what does Jesus say? And I'll tell you, and if you're part of the religious groups, Jesus and Zeus are the same person. And then Jesus says, for as lightning comes out of the east to the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Well, he throws lightning too? Oh yeah, just like Zeus. And you know something else? It says in Revelation 19:11, and I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faith. He comes riding back on a white horse throwing lightning bolts. And the same story that was written by him was written by the guys who wrote about Zeus and Pegasus, because it is the same story. So who's riding on the white horse throwing lightning bolts? Zeus alias Jesus. And the white horse is Pegasus. And who formed the lightning bolts? Argus, Brontes, and Steropes, Bright, Thunderer, and Lightener. And what are they? They're the Cyclops. They're the single eye. That's why supernova 1987A, when it brings down the magnetism on the Earth, is going to cause this tremendous change in consciousness, because that's what they do. So it's the single eye inside of you that is the Lightener, the Thunderer, the Brightener. And what does it say in the Bible? If your eye be single, if you stimulate that Cyclops inside of you, your body will fill with light. And what is the pineal gland secreting to your body? Melatonin, which is a skin lightener. I still get people that write me in here, oh, so you're so full of baloney. Don't you know melanin darkens the skin? I said, it's not melanin, it's melatonin. And then they never write back. Never say, oh, I'm sorry I had to. They never say anything. They just go on and, and they grit their teeth. And religion pays absolutely no attention at all. But this is the important part. The National Aeronautics and Space Agency tells us, and you have the documentation in your little hands, in your little book that you don't bring here to this little room, but you have it in your head, that as light from above, touching the green of the earth in plants and humans, is the most powerful energy booster on the planet, and they connect it to DNA. And Jeremy Narby of Stanford University has told us that DNA from you emits photons, which are messenger particles of light. For God's sake, how can you transmit a message to somebody else? It is done for you. You have a built-in message center, and it is called DNA, and it sends out photons, which are messenger particles. Living beings, you and me, send out photons, messenger particles. But we know what is sent out. Do we understand how? Do we understand how to receive particles of light? How do you receive this message? How, in other words, and then what's so interesting, there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever that the DNA in you sends out messages in the form of this magnetism. If that's the case, then we're looking and we find out that the Scripture says that we are created in the image and likeness of God. Well, if we are created in the image and likeness of God, it would seem reasonable that God's DNA sends out messages too. And when we sit in meditation now, we are looking to receive the message from that which is the universal creator in the form of external DNA coming in. And then the great part is because people will say, well, how am I going to know the will of God? Because they're expecting somebody to whisper in their ear, listen, don't buy the car, it's a lemon, and all this stuff. That isn't the way it works. Now we know that it works by the DNA, let's call it the DNA of God coming in and not talking to you, but talking to your DNA. Your DNA, which leaves the body when you die. Isn't it great? When your body dies, the light leaves via the pineal gland. And it takes with it the DNA because the photon has the properties of DNA. And then you enter into another body and you're bringing into it external DNA to mix with this new DNA. In humans, if humans emit photons from DNA, that means we send out messages from our own DNA. Why is that so significant? For this reason. In Genesis chapter 5, verse 1, it said, "This is the book of the generations of Adam in the day that God created man. In the likeness of God made he him." If we are made in the likeness of God and our DNA sends out messenger particles, that means that God's DNA also sends out messenger particles. Thus, the angles of light that come down from above, or angels of light that come down from above, are photons or messenger particles that are God's DNA. And they enter into the DNA of living things, and the two DNAs come together, and the encrypted message is decoded, and then the information is transmitted electrically to the synapses of your brain, and you suddenly think, ooh, I got an idea. Ooh, I suddenly understand something. Nobody told you anything. You didn't hear anybody whispering. There was no secret messages laid on your table. Your DNA communicated with the external God DNA, and you understand. That's how the shamans were able to combine things, and that's why the shamans say the plants told us how to do this. Then, of course, in the midst of all this, the National Aeronautic and Space Agency can say photosystem 1, which is light from above, coming at an angle to the Earth, touching the chemicals of the Earth, is the most powerful energy booster on the planet. And of course it is, because it is God's DNA. And then we understand how the ancient religions said what? All creation is by the twins. All creation is from the twins. The twins are the double helix, the winding stairs of DNA. Thus, creation is from DNA because the light energy flowing through the universe, bringing to life whatever it touches, is God's DNA. All creation is from DNA. Albert, who has a scientific background, as a scientist, will tell you that all creation is from DNA. It is light. It is the green. It is the stimulation of amino acids to nucleic acid as DNA. It is all creation from DNA. So then all creation comes from the twins. And the great god of Mexico's name is Quetzalcoatl. And the word Quetzalcoatl means the magnificent twin. And religion doesn't pay any attention. They know nothing about this. And people flock into these places and listen to some bizarre Middle Ages superstition. And then they'll come out and say, God, what's happening to our society? What's happening to our traditional values? We sit in meditation. We receive light via the pineal or light receptor. When we do that, now we understand we are seeing God face to face because we are receiving God's DNA. And I do not say that on the basis of what I think or what I got off the internet. I say that on the basis of Dr. Jeremy Narby of Stanford University. I say it on the basis of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And I say it in the basis of all of the science and all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom that has gone into understanding DNA. So, as Narby said, when the jungle people took within themselves the DNA of plants that they were instructed by the plants and the molecular structure of plants to heal. Just think of that. You're in the middle of the jungle, you got your little loincloth on, you're going around smoking all stuff, and the fire's going and all this stuff, but you're a brilliant person in the knowledge of molecular structure of plants and healing. And so you take within yourself this stuff, and you get higher than a kite. But something at the time that this is happening is instructing you in the healing process to save the lives of other people in the tribe. In other words, all by yourself, no doctors, no hospital, no nothing, but nature is providing a way for you to be able to heal others. Nature is providing a way for you to heal others where there is no other way. There is no doctor to talk to. There is no scientist to talk to. There is no hospital to talk to. So nature speaks to you. God speaks to you face to face. Well, what happens when you take within yourself the DNA of God? And I'll tell you how it happens. Provided you're not talking to them, God will talk to you. You cannot talk to the plant if you're talking to them because they say plants don't talk. You cannot talk to God if you're talking to them because they say you have to listen our way. The guy in the middle of the jungle with his little loincloth on and his little cigarette in his mouth, he doesn't know anything about them. He doesn't talk to them, so he can talk to God. And then they come to his little village and say, oh, you've got to stop doing this. You've got to get saved. We'll save you. We'll make you like us. Okay? So that's the point to keep in mind. You can meditate. And like most people, meditation will pretty much not get you anywhere. And the reason is you're still communicating with them. When you're willing to step away and no longer take anything they say, but are willing to communicate with, then it will talk to you. And that's how the people of the jungle are able to do things that the pharmaceutical companies of this country are going over there and asking them what is the molecular properties of this and that. What we can't find out, they know, because they don't listen to them. They speak with God. They speak with nature. Are you willing to do the same? And most people are not. And Narby says, these people were instructed. And so in the book of Malachi, in the Bible, it says about DNA, behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before you. And the Lord whom you seek shall suddenly appear in his temple, which is here. Even the messenger of the covenant whom you delight in, he shall come. And this is what it was written in Matthew 11:10. He says, for this is he of whom it is written, I will send my messenger before your face, which shall prepare your way. That's good. Now we start to understand. I don't like all that religious stuff. I don't like all those sounding words, religious words. Always freak me out. But I'm starting to understand. Seeing God face to face means my DNA can communicate with God's DNA. My DNA is going to communicate with nature's DNA. And when that happens, I am having a face-to-face conversation. Because as a human being, I'm not capable of that, neither are you. But if my DNA is certainly capable of that, because my DNA is exactly the same as God's DNA, because we're created in the image and likeness. That means the universe. And that tree's DNA is exactly the same, and the dog's DNA is exactly the same, and everybody can communicate with everybody, because nobody's talking through the mind or through the brain. They're talking through the DNA. They're talking through the creative process of the universe. And it works. And not only that, we're finding out from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and Stanford University and anybody else that, yes, this is true. This is the way it works. And so, who was the messenger in the story? Who was the messenger in the Bible story that you read? Where's my Bible? Where's my Word of God? Here's the Word of God. And what does it say? Who's the messenger? What is his name? John the Baptist. How could he be a messenger? His head was cut off. When his head was separated, it means he was no longer connected via the brain to these. It was a symbol. He became the messenger. He was the waterman. And the water is the second stage of consciousness. So he took you into the water, the second stage of consciousness, because his head was cut off. He was separated from all of this. So he takes you into the water, which is the second stage of consciousness. And then he would bring you out of the water, up into the air, which is the third stage of consciousness. And there you would meet Jesus in the air, as the Bible says. You would meet that which is creative process in that third stage of consciousness. And air is where there is nothing. That's why you call people an airhead. There's nothing in there. It's air. And this is the basis of the 5 stages of consciousness in Greek. Now, I want to add one thing to you, and then you can go about your business, whatever your business is. I have number 117 for you. Stuff. More stuff. But this is good stuff. Albert, you're going to like this stuff. This is what has just happened. Scientists. And these guys are pretty close. Well, not too far. University of Wisconsin in Madison. Scientists have devised a way, get this, folks, of hiding a coded message in a dot of human DNA. They did it, it's similar to the way that the spies used to do things in World War II. You know what they used to do in World War II? They would take a message like attack at dawn. And they would take that and they would photograph that. And then they would reduce the photograph down, 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 until it was nothing more than a black dot. And they would take the dot and they would put it at the end of a sentence that said, well, how are you today? Did you and Mary Jane enjoy the party? And they would put that little dot at the end of that. But when the person got the message about Mary Jane's party, they would take it and they would blow up that dot and up, 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 up thousands of times, and there was the message, attack at dawn. Well, these guys did the same thing, only they did it with a dot of DNA. Could you quickly, with the aid of your little altar people, help and get that out as quickly as you can, please? As Joan is, everybody have, now John, you have to go fast and get this out to everybody, because they're all looking at their watches and they want to get out of here. But I want you to have this, because this is what's important. When you look at this, remember something. That science is learning how to send a message via DNA. And what we're learning now is how a message is sent to you via DNA. What we're learning is how, quote, God does it. All right? And if you look at that, and they've done very good in getting these out quickly, if you look at that and you look at paragraph 1, and then we'll leave after we finish with this. All right, Joan, come on, back to your seat. John. People have a tendency to stop and discussing things with people. All right, ladies. All right. Okay, now, listen to me. Just go through this with me, okay? Paragraph 1. Scientists have devised a way of hiding a coded message in a dot of human DNA. Okay? Now, what you have in your hands I want you, and especially for the folks on television, what you have in your hands comes from Peter Sevenson of the Associated Press. And at the very bottom it says the Associated Press, this information contained in the Associated Press news report. Okay. Paragraph 2. It is little more than a neat trick that exploits, get this, the enormous capacity of DNA to hold information. Aha! Look out. Remember what Dr. Narby said, the people in the jungle were getting information from the plant DNA, weren't they? Okay. Paragraph 3. In the Second World War, Nazi spies sent messages by reducing them photographically to a microdot. The dot is then placed as a period at the end of a sentence in an otherwise innocent letter. I explained that to you. Paragraph 4. It shows how scientists did the same thing and mailed a microdot that contained a secret message hidden amid the millions of strands of DNA. And paragraph 6, DNA is shaped like a twisted ladder. Now, look at me just for a minute. Everybody's eyes went up. Everybody's having, oh, there we go. Listen to me. What does it say? DNA shaped like a twisted ladder. 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 8, talking about the construction of the temple. The door for the middle chamber. The middle chamber is the third ventricle of the brain where the pineal, pituitary, and all that stuff is located. The middle chamber was in the right side of the house, which is talking about the right hemisphere of the brain, and they went up with winding stairs into the middle chamber and out of the middle chamber into the third, which is the third ventricle. There is the winding stairs of DNA. The right hemisphere of the brain, the third ventricle of the brain. And after then, if you look what happened when the scientists placed the secret message into the DNA. Look what they did. Look at paragraph 8. The scientists then chopped the entire DNA of a human cell into pieces of about the same length and mixed them with the message strand. Paragraph 9. They mailed the letter with the dot on it themselves to prove that the DNA could survive the rigors of the U.S. mail. Paragraph 10. When the letter arrived, they extracted the DNA, multiplied millions of times the strand containing the message, and read its contents. The message they chose for their test was perhaps the most famous secret of the microdot era, June 6th invasion, Normandy. Paragraph 12. Ann Condon, scientist at the University of Wisconsin, said of this, it exploits one of the great advantages of DNA, which is you can have a huge amount of information in a tiny volume. Now probably the most important part of this article. Just bear with me, then you're out of here. Paragraph 13 and 14. Conventional computers would not be of much use in reading a DNA microdot. Instead, it might require advances in DNA computing. The fledgling field of making DNA strands do the math. As for any practical applications, you would need a biochemical lab to read and write the messages. Now, why did I say that's the most important part of this article? Because humans are now learning to do what is the very basis of our entire religious and spiritual experience, the very essence of how jungle people learned the molecular structure of plants for healing. In the same way, the universe brings messages to us. Science is learning to bring messages to each other through DNA. So as Dr. Narby told us, the ancient people in their writings said that all creation comes from the twins, Mani asked us who told him the nature of these things. He said the twins. We learned that the twin is DNA, the double helix, the source of all creation. And in the same way that God sends the message to the angels or the angles of light that enter the body, DNA, that message comes to you as a microdot through where? When? Listen, don't go. How can this happen? Because when you watch yourself, and you can look at this in any quantum physics experiment, when you watch yourself in meditation, you collapse the wave to what? A dot. A particle. That particle, that dot, can then enter via the pineal gland. And that little dot then entwines itself into your DNA, and that message, attack at dawn, is decoded. That's how God does it. That's how angles of light enter as messenger particles and give you messages. That's why meditation is so critically important, because you're missing your mail. You're not going to the post office. You're not picking up your mail. And there are instructions for your life that you're not getting. And if you'll do this, these messages will come to you. And now if you want the proof of it, you've got it in your hands. That scientists on this earth are doing the exact same thing. They're sending messages to one another in the form of a dot in DNA. That is exactly how God sends his message to you. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear him say, "You've got mail." We're getting there. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.